The front yard smelled like rain and gunpowder. 2 black bags were lying on the ground, shapes I'd recognize even in a nightmare. Twin sisters, barely 23. The badges that killed them still shimmered under red lights. One of the cops laughed as he lit a cigarette. That sound that burned itself into my bones. Hit like, subscribe for more betrayal stories, and comment your city or country. They told me to stay behind the tape, but my boots kept moving forward. The deputy's voice cracked when he shouted, "Sir, you can't be here." I didn't answer. Every step felt heavier, like the air itself was pushing me back. The rain hit my uniform sleeves as if the sky decided to wash away my past and dump me into a new kind of war. 2 weeks earlier, I was in uniform, standing with my squad in Iraq. Tonight, I was standing on the same soil I swore to protect, looking at pieces of my family zipped inside black plastic. A detective's badge flashed in my face. His nameplate said Dominic Wade. Accidental crossfire, he muttered, lighting another cigarette. I looked at the 2 bullet holes in my sister's mailbox. Straight lines. Controlled shots. No scatter. That wasn't crossfire. That was precision. Behind him, another cop, Kyle, laughed quietly and slapped Dominic's shoulder. The kind of laugh men use when they've done something unforgivable and think it's just another shift. "Sorry, brother," Dominic said to me. "Wrong place, wrong time." He didn't recognize who I was. Not yet. I stared at his hands, the smell of burnt gunpowder still rising from his gloves, and said nothing. Talking was for people who still believed in justice. I wasn't one of them anymore. When the coroner's van took the bodies, the crowd scattered. It was just the yellow tape fluttering in the wind. A reporter tried to push a mic toward me, asking, "Were you related to the victims?" Related? The 2 bodies that shared my blood, my childhood, my last name, related, didn't even scrape the surface. I stayed at the scene long after everyone left. The asphalt shimmered under the flashing lights, puddles dyed red. Somewhere between the noise and the drizzle, I could still hear Ivy's laugh from last Thanksgiving, teasing Violet about her cooking. That memory hurt more than any bullet ever could. The official line came fast. Undercover police operation gone wrong. They claimed the suspects opened fire first. But there were no guns found, just 2 notebooks, 1 laptop, and a hard drive. I knew what was on that hard drive. Ivy was a journalism intern, digging into a story about corruption inside the local police department. After what I saw tonight, I didn't need confirmation. She'd stepped on a landmine, and Violet was just collateral damage. The next morning wasn't morning anymore. It was a continuation of the same nightmare. At the station, reception told me Chief Victor was too busy to see me. So I waited. 2 hours. 3. My patience ended when I saw Dominic walk out of Victor's office, smirking, sipping coffee, joking about paperwork cleanup. I stood up. The hall went quiet. He looked at me and recognized me this time. His face froze for half a second, just enough for me to see the guilt beneath the arrogance. "Ranger, right?" he said, pretending to remember. "Listen, we're real sorry about your family, but you need to let the system handle this." "The system?" I interrupted. He smiled weakly. "Yeah, the investigation team will." "You mean the same team that shot them?" I whispered. He didn't answer. That's when Chief Victor appeared, face red, eyes full of authority and fear. "That's enough," he barked. "Step outside before I have you removed." "I came here for the truth," I said quietly. "You came here for closure," he corrected, glancing at Dominic. "There's a difference." They escorted me out, like I was the criminal. Outside, the flag above the building flapped against a gray sky. I'd fought to protect that same flag across oceans. Now it hung over a station full of liars. I walked to the parking lot and sat in my truck, hands shaking, not from fear, but restraint. My knuckles pressed wide against the steering wheel. Military training teaches you control, discipline. But no one trains you for watching your only family buried under lies. I replayed every detail in my head. 12 shell casings, 2 door shots, 1 security camera missing. Someone had scrubbed the footage. But I knew small mistakes always survive cleanup. Somewhere, some flash drive, some forgotten backup, there'd be a piece of evidence they missed. That night, I drove back to the neighborhood. The same rain returned, heavy, relentless. Most houses were asleep, except one porch light glowing down the block. An older woman, Mrs. Clara, peeked out when she saw headlights stop near her lawn. "You the brother?" she whispered from behind the screen door. I nodded. She hesitated, then said softly, "They weren't aiming at nobody else, son. They came straight to your sister's door, yelling something about a file." Her voice cracked, and they laughed when it was over. I didn't realize I'd been holding my breath until my throat burned. Then she said, "I got a camera. One of them doorbell things. Footage might still be there, unless someone erased it." She invited me inside briefly. Her living room smelled like dust and old memories. The footage loaded slow on her tablet. Then it played, shaky, grainy, timestamp blinking. 2 unmarked police cars. 10 men. Tactical positions. No warning. The sound of a knock, then shouting. 17 seconds later, gunfire. Over and over. The twins never stood a chance. The storm outside grew louder, wind scraping the windows. I copied the video on my flash drive and thanked Mrs. Clara. She looked scared for even talking to me. Before leaving, she grabbed my sleeve and whispered, "Be careful. They watch everyone now." Driving out of the neighborhood, the wipers fought against the downpour, and my mind replayed the moment from the footage, the exact second Dominic raised his gun. I froze the image in my memory, frame by frame. Because his mistake was simple. He looked straight at the camera before firing. By midnight, the drive was tucked safely inside a sealed pouch under my seat. My sisters were gone. Their voices silenced. Their evidence stolen. But Dominic's face was all the proof I needed. One mistake. And that mistake was going to cost him everything. Morning didn't feel like morning anymore. Just another gray hour stretching into another hollow day. The funeral home refused to let me see the bodies without clearance from the department. Official investigation, they said. But one man didn't speak like the rest. Felix, the coroner, had been at the county office for nearly 20 years. His handshake felt heavy when he met me at the side entrance, eyes darting toward the cameras like someone already watching us. He locked the door behind us and motioned for silence. "This has to stay between us," he whispered, rolling one of the cold drawers open. Under the harsh fluorescent light, the truth was louder than any siren. Both sisters were shot clean, center mass, downward angle. Execution style. Felix wiped sweat off his forehead. The official line says crossfire, but both girls took rounds from the same rifle. Police grade. I shouldn't even be showing you this. He lifted the rib x-rays. The trajectory was identical, controlled shots, expert precision. Not panic firing. Not accidental. It was target elimination. Then his phone buzzed. He froze, stared at the number, and silenced the call. "You need to go now," he said quickly. "Someone warned me you might come by. The station knows." Before leaving, Felix slipped me a sealed envelope. "Keep this hidden," he whispered. "If something happens to me, you'll know why." I didn't open it right away. Not there. Not in that cold room surrounded by steel. But as I stepped outside, a police cruiser drove by slowly, the same unit number I saw near the murder scene. They were already tracking my movements. At home, I tore open the envelope. Inside were 3 photos and a printout of a ballistic report, marked "Do Not File." The bullets pulled from Ivy's body matched a rifle assigned to Officer Dominic Wade, the same man who called it a crossfire. That was no coincidence. That was evidence buried before daylight. I scanned the documents into my laptop, encrypting the files. Years in the Rangers taught me paranoia was just another form of awareness. Every shadow might hide a move. Every silence meant they were listening. Then came the knock. 3 slow taps. Not loud. Too calm. I peeked through the blinds. A tall man in a gray suit stood there, rain dripping from his hat. He wasn't local law. His posture gave it away, federal. When I opened the door, he flashed an ID that only half looked official. Special Agent Preston. He looked around the porch before speaking. You're making noise, soldier. The kind our city doesn't like. What do you want? I asked. To make sure you stay alive. Or disappear quietly. Your choice. He stepped closer, lowering his voice. The men who killed your sisters, clean-handed cops, they've got wires into everything. Judges. Reporters. Hell, maybe even me. He smirked faintly. If you chase this the wrong way, you won't make it to trial. So what do you suggest? He paused. Disappear. Leave this city before they put a badge on your coffin. Then he turned and walked toward a black SUV parked at the corner. No plate, no markings. For a moment, I almost believed him. Almost. Night fell early. The rain was thicker, wind slicing through the power lines. I stared at the city skyline from the kitchen window, watching the reflection of lightning ripple across the glass. I wasn't leaving. They could hide behind uniforms and paperwork, but soldiers don't retreat from ground they've buried family in. Felix's words kept echoing. The station knows. If he was right, time was bleeding out. I drove back toward the outskirts, parking by the old service road where the police training range used to be. The sound of distant thunder mixed with gunshots carried by the wind. I waited until the last target light flickered off before making my way along the fence line. The place was locked, but not secured. Inside the range building, I found what I needed. Leftover shell casings dumped in a side bin, firing signatures from department weapons. I pocketed a few, planning to match them to the bullets from the report. Cold-proof. Undeniable, if I lived to use it. Footsteps. Crunching gravel. Someone had followed. I crouched behind the gear locker, the smell of oil thick in the air. A flashlight beam cut through the dark, shaking slightly. Whoever held it was nervous or pretending to be. Then the voice came, low but sharp. You were warned, Ranger. I recognized the tone instantly. Chief Victor. He stepped past the row of lockers, gun drawn, his badge catching the light. You don't drop this, he said. You vanish. Maybe tomorrow. Maybe tonight. Choice is yours. I didn't move. He smirked, mistaking stillness for fear. Thought you army types were smarter than this. You think anyone will believe your story over ours. He holstered the gun and turned to leave. But before stepping out, he added, almost casually, Felix won't be showing you any more files. Accidents happen. Then he was gone. The drive back was silent. Only the wiper's rhythm broke the storm's growl. Anger didn't burn. It calcified, turning to something colder. Strategy. Patience. By dawn, the news confirmed what I already sensed. County employee found dead in car crash. Possible DUI. Felix. That wasn't an accident. It was a warning. The folder he'd given me sat on the passenger seat. The evidence he died for. I tightened my grip on the wheel and whispered, one mistake. Because they thought warnings would scare me. They'd just given me a reason to hunt. Felix's death confirmed one thing. Every truth I uncovered had a body count. By the second night, I stopped sleeping. My world had narrowed to quiet engines, black coffee, and the sound of tires cutting wet roads. I kept replaying the footage from across Mrs. Clara's porch camera. 10 officers. 2 cars. Dominic's face, half lit by muzzle flash. What gnawed at me most wasn't the brutality, it was their calm. Like they'd done it 1,000 times before. I spent hours tracing badge numbers from the files on that flash drive Felix left. Between the fragments, one name appeared again and again, Officer Grant Myers. He wasn't at the scene long. The footage caught him stepping out, scanning the street, gesturing to kill the camera. But there was somebody else at that corner too. A delivery truck. White paint. Company logo blurred by rain. Maybe the driver saw something. I followed that thread. The delivery company, North Star Logistics, wasn't hard to find. A decaying warehouse by the freeway, 3 trucks abandoned out front. People there didn't ask questions, especially when you paid cash. I showed a photo of the truck to the foreman. He squinted. Belonged to Travis. Kid disappeared right after that police shootout. Where'd he live? I asked. Used to have a trailer behind Miller Creek, off County Road 19. Miller Creek was forgotten land. half flooded, half burned. Perfect place to hide someone who'd seen too much. When I reached the trailer, the door was unlocked, dust thick on everything. The smell of damp clothes and gasoline. On a small desk, a cracked phone blinked low battery. I plugged it into my car charger. A single video file appeared, time-stamped the night of the murders. Moments before the shooting, the driver recorded himself waiting for a delivery signature. Then sirens blared, 10 men in tactical gear rushing past. He cursed, ducked, and kept recording through the windshield. The audio picked up screaming, then gunfire. Last frame, a cop noticing the truck camera, running straight toward it. The video cut to static. My chest tightened. The driver probably didn't survive a week after that. I uploaded the clip onto a backup server. Every piece of evidence had to exist in more than one place. I'd learned in combat that redundancy meant survival. But something still didn't feel right. Felix was dead, Clara was scared, and I was now dancing too close to a line that kept moving further away. Another ranger might have called for backup, but this wasn't a mission. It was personal extermination disguised as justice. Late that night, a message arrived from an unknown number. Stop digging, soldier. Next funeral's yours. No name. No location. Just a photo. My truck, parked outside the motel. They'd found me. I grabbed my keys instantly, ran to the lot, empty except for tire marks curling into the wet street. They were watching from somewhere unseen. Maybe through city cameras. Maybe through people I hadn't yet noticed. I drove straight to Mrs. Clara's block to warn her. Her porch light still burned dim yellow. When she opened the door, fear already lived in her eyes. I knew they'd come, she whispered. They parked down the corner last night. 2 men, just sitting there. She led me inside, locking all 3 bolts. They asked about the file. Said if I had anything else, I should hand it over before accidents start happening around here. Her voice trembled. I told them I deleted it, but they didn't believe me. I looked at her shaking hands and realized she was protecting me, lying for a soldier she barely knew. Outside, an engine started. Headlights washed over the curtains. 2 officers stepped out of an unmarked Crown Vic and walked slowly toward the porch. We killed the lights. Footsteps. Gravel crunching. Then knuckles rapped lightly on the door. Ma'am. One called, calm but sharp. We need to ask a few routine questions about the incident last week. She didn't answer. Neither did I. The seconds stretched thin. Then a radio crackled from their car. Negative on her phone ping. Move to next location. The steps retreated. Doors slammed. Silence returned. Clara sank into her chair, holding her chest. They'll be back, she whispered. Let them. Before leaving, I placed a burner phone on her table. If anything happens, call this number. Don't open your door to anyone else. Her eyes caught mine. You're not going to stop, are you? I shook my head. They took everything already. When I reached for the doorknob, she said something so quiet it almost got lost under the rain. They filmed more than you think. I turned back. What do you mean? Her hands trembled as she handed me a USB stick taped to the bottom of her drawer. The old man across the street. He used to run repairs on city cameras. Before he disappeared, he gave me this. Said if anything ever happened near our block, keep it safe for Ivy. I stared at the small device in my palm. Dry, dusty, years forgotten. Whatever was on it could connect dots I didn't even know existed. I drove off before dawn, highway stretching under a cold mist. The stick sat on the dashboard, reflecting the last street light as I left the neighborhood behind. Back at the motel, I loaded the video. Grainy city cam footage. Time-stamped the night of the raid. 10 cops exiting 2 vehicles. But something new this time. A shadow at the end of the street, watching them. Not a civilian. Not backup. Someone giving orders through an earpiece. Someone higher. Frame by frame, I zoomed in. The face appeared, blurred but distinct enough to recognize. Chief Victor. He'd been there. Not at the desk. At the crime scene. The walls of that motel felt smaller with every breath. They'd staged everything, wiped every trace, and pretended command never left the office. Now I knew the truth. Victor didn't just cover it up, he let it. There was only one question left. Why? And whatever that answer was, it was about to pull down the entire department with him. The motel room walls felt like they were breathing. Every light buzzed. Every sound turned into a maybe threat. I'd spent years surviving ambushes overseas, but this kind of silence, corporate, rehearsed, American silence, was worse. I backed up the footage onto 2 external drives and buried one inside the motel's water heater panel. If they found me and smashed everything, at least one truth would outlive me. The rain didn't stop. I drove through it toward a small diner that stayed open 24 hours, the kind of place where night drunks and cops mixed without looking at each other. I parked across from 2 patrol units. Both belonged to the same precinct. My pulse slowed as I recognized one of the men inside, Kyle Reese, one of Victor's shooters. His laughter cut through the diner window. He wasn't nervous. None of them were. They still believed they were untouchable. I stepped inside, took the back booth. The waitress, tired eyes, shaky hands, poured coffee and didn't ask questions. From my seat, I had a straight reflection off the window. I didn't need to face them to watch them. Kyle was bragging. 10 seconds, that's all it took. Girl didn't even scream. The others chuckled. One of them, a rookie I didn't recognize, asked, "Aren't you worried the ranger might come for us?" Kyle shrugged. "He's broken. Sitting drunk somewhere. He ain't coming." They were wrong. I left before they could see me, memorized the direction Kyle drove off. He stopped by a sleazy bar at the edge of town. I waited until he got comfortable, then phoned a number from an old army contact, a hacker named Julian who owed me more than one favor. Julian picked up, voice half static. "Been years, brother." "Need a trace," I said. "Badge number 2431. Officer Kyle Reese. I want everything, accounts, family schedules." He whistled. "You in deep." "Always." The line cut. Silence swallowed the cabin. I smoked half a cigarette, something I hadn't done in years, just to fight the claustrophobia of waiting. 20 minutes later, a file dropped in my inbox. Bank transfers, encrypted emails, credit card uses, all under fake charities registered by Dominic Wade, the same officer from the crime scene. They'd been siphoning kickbacks from cartel and pound seizures and laundering it through a nonprofit called Blue Arms Initiative. The date of their last deposit matched the night my sisters died. I tightened my fist until my nails bit skin. Blood pricked my palm. Thin reminders I was still human under all the calculation. Midnight became infiltration hour. I found Kyle's address near the industrial flats. His patrol car sat outside, engine cold, lights off. I didn't need a weapon. I only needed his fear. The door wasn't locked. Cop arrogance. I moved through the corridor like fog, measured, silent. From the living room came the muted sounds of a TV. Kyle sat on the couch, half asleep, beard dangling from his hand. His radio whispered background chatter. On the table, phone, badge, keys, open laptop. I crouched beside it, scanning files fast. Messages to Victor. Kyle, driver's gone. Cleaned. Victor, good. Stay low. Ranger circling. Don't talk. I copied everything onto my drive, then unplugged the router. Kyle stirred, confused, eyes half open. What the? The sight of a silhouette in his living room froze him. Recognition flared in his face. "You." My hand went over his mouth. Not violence. Just silence. "Listen," I said calm, almost whisper. "That night, you called it cleanup. I call it murder. I have proof. I have your messages. You can talk, or you can vanish with the rest of them. Pick your ending." Sweat rolled down his temple. His voice cracked. "We were ordered, man. Chief said the girls had evidence. Names, account numbers. He swore they were cartel moles. We didn't know. He was lying halfway, I could tell. Who gave the go order? Victor and someone above him. City Attorney Mason Grant. The funding guy. He's got dirt in every file." When he said Mason's name, his phone started ringing. Unknown ID. We both looked at it. He answered. "Yeah," he muttered. "Static." Then Victor's voice, clear enough. Rangers in the wind. If he finds you, don't let him talk. You know what to do. Kyle's eyes widened. He dropped the phone. Every possible way this could end was already written. I left him shaking on his couch, alive but exposed. That was worse than killing him. Tomorrow, his guilt would eat him faster than a bullet. Back in the truck, I played his recorded confession through my dashboard mic. Every word saved, every second backed up. This was no longer about vengeance. It was about exposure. 10 cops, 1 chief, 1 city attorney. I needed the right domino to fall first. The next name on the list was Dominic Wade. He worked night patrol by Pier 19, quiet docks where street cameras accidentally stopped recording after dark. I parked 2 blocks away, wind cutting sharp through the water smell. My boots touched the ground, steady. I followed him from a distance, through chain-link shadows. He leaned against his cruiser, texting, unaware of the hunter inside his own backyard. A freighter horn drowned every sound except the click of my backup camera. Dominic's phone buzzed again. He frowned, typed, then froze mid-text as one of the dock lights flickered. My reflection moved across the puddles toward him, slow enough to be invisible until I wanted visibility. He turned, hand reaching for his gun, but not fast enough. I hit the weapon aside, slammed him against the car hood. You recognize me now? I said. His breath stuttered. Our ranger, say her name. Ivy and Violet, please, he shivered when I leaned close. Your bullets carry serials, Dominic. Felix matched one. It's on file. He whimpered. Victor forced us. He said if we didn't do it, we'd rot in prison. There's someone higher, someone feeding him orders. Who? He hesitated. Then tires screeched from the pier road. Another cruiser arriving fast, headlights cutting through fog. Friend or cleanup team? I handcuffed Dominic to his own car door, pocketed his phone, and melted into the dark before backup saw me. They'd find him babbling, scared, half-coherent. I wanted him talking. Panic spreads faster than bullets. By morning, news channels lit up. Off-duty cop found tied to cruiser, hints at corruption. Victor's department started cracking at the edges, suspensions issued behind closed doors. They were turning on each other, trying to locate leaks that were never inside the building. They were wearing badges. I watched from a motel TV as reporters fought for scraps of information. For the first time, the lie had a fracture. Rain started again, soft at first, then wild, hammering the window like the world beating drums for war. One mistake, and I'd keep making them pay for it until that badge meant something again. By the time dawn cracked gray over the rooftops, every news station carried the same headline. Possible police corruption scandal under review. Dominic's arrest had cracked the shell but not pierced the shell's venom. Behind the visible panic, Chief Victor still pulled strings. I needed legal teeth. Evidence meant nothing if I died before any courtroom saw it. There was one judge rumored clean, Judge Nathaniel Ross, a war veteran who'd once prosecuted internal affairs cases. If anyone had spine, it would be him. I called an old contact from base days, Colonel Grant, now retired and living quiet. He didn't ask questions, just said, Ross hears cases every Wednesday. Get there early, son. City's afraid of him. Wednesday came wrapped in thunder. My jacket smelled of rain and gun oil. I carried a flash drive tucked beneath my dog tag, a copy of every confession, every video, and the ballistic report Felix died protecting. The courthouse smelled of disinfectant and arrogance. Marble floors echoed each step like a countdown. Ross sat in his private office, an American flag drooping near cracked blinds. He looked older than his photos, lines of disappointment etched deep into his face. He studied my file. They killed your sisters. Yes, sir. And you have evidence? I slid the drive across the desk. He hesitated, eyes flicking to the wall camera, then inserted the drive into his computer. The footage loaded, body cam fragments, Dominic's shaken confession, Clara's street video. When it ended, Ross didn't speak for nearly a minute. The only sound was the ticking of a desk clock. Finally, he whispered, "If this is real, you've just toppled half the department. That's the point." He sighed. "You should leave the city tonight. Let me handle it the right way." The right way? I almost believed him. Then something shifted. His jaw tightened. His hand slid slowly to the desk drawer. "What are you doing?" I asked. He smiled sadly. "Cleaning up mistakes." The drawer opened. Instead of a pen, he placed a lighter beside the computer. "Do you have any idea who funds my campaigns, son?" Every muscle in my back froze. "Chief Victor." He shook his head. "Higher. The same attorney your officer mentioned, Mason Grant. He owns half this city's silence." Fire bloomed as the lighter sparked. He lifted the flame to the USB drive still inside the port. Plastic curled, smoke seeping upward. The evidence, the only undeniable proof, died sizzling in front of me. I lunged forward, slammed the laptop shut, but the screen had already shorted out. Ross stood, voice low and cold. "Walk away, soldier. You're not authorized for this war." I stared at him, disbelief cracking into fury. "Felix died for that file. And you'll join him if you keep pushing," he said. "Security's already been called." Outside the door, muffled boots approached, multiple pairs. I backed toward the window, mind firing calculations. 2 floors to pavement. Reinforced glass. I could break it if timing worked. "Last chance," Ross said. "You leave. I forget this meeting happened." "I can't forget my blood," I answered. I threw the chair through the glass. Alarm screamed. Shards exploded outward. I dove through the opening just as the first guard burst in. The drop shocked my ribs, but adrenaline erased pain. Shots cracked behind me. Warning, not kill shots. They wanted me alive enough to blame me later. I ran through the alley, lungs burning, rain slicing my face. Sirens followed like hounds. Every escape route I planned vanished one by one. Blocked streets, flashing cruisers, roadblocks blooming under stormlight. They'd prepared for this. Ross's call bought Victor the time. At the corner by East Dock Bridge, a construction truck idled unmanned, engine humming. I climbed underneath, wedged between axles as flashlights swept over the pavement above me. Negative visual. A voice barked over the radios. "Move to next grid." When the noise thinned, I rolled free and limped toward the shadows by the riverbank. Water slapped the pylons, dark and cold. My breath came ragged, clarity cutting through chaos. Legal channels were dead. Every door with a badge or robe was bought. From the bridge wiring cage, I watched police units disperse like nervous ants. Somewhere downtown, Ross would file a report painting me as an unstable veteran. By morning, my face would sit on every patrol board with a red tag, armed and dangerous. They'd stolen justice, and now they wanted the story too. I walked until city lights blurred into fog. My reflection in the puddles barely looked human, just ghost and rage. I thought of Ivy's laughter, Violet's paint-stained hands, their apartment walls covered with dreams they'd never finish. Some wars didn't need battlefields or flags. Some just needed truth set on fire. Felix, Clara, even Dominic, they'd all been pieces on a rigged board. I still had one weapon left, humiliation. Turn them against each other until the machine that killed my sisters devoured itself. The legal path was dead. The hunter's path had just begun. The legal door slammed shut behind me, leaving only the echoes of betrayal. Judge Ross's warning still burned in my ears, replaying with every heartbeat. By dawn, my name was plastered across news tickers, former Ranger suspect in police corruption attack. They flipped the story perfectly. Hero turned fugitive. Good. Let them think they had control. They'd mistaken silence for surrender. For the next 72 hours, I disappeared off every grid I'd ever left a fingerprint on. No cards. No phone. Just cash, burner tech, and my old training. The same kind that made ghosts out of soldiers. I drove west out of the city, parked in an empty lumber yard, and built my base inside a forgotten maintenance shed. My new weapon wasn't a rifle. It was fear. Through Julian's encrypted feeds, I started mapping their private lives. Chief Victor, weekend golf at the Belmont Country Club, 2 mistresses, offshore account in the Caymans. Officer Grant Myers, gambling debts hidden under fake names. City Attorney Mason Grant, a front charity funneling money through bank IDs matching police union bonuses. The hypocrisy read like scripture. Julian's voice came through the earpiece. You really want to do this, brother? When they panic, they bite everything around them. That's the plan, I said. We make them chew their own tails. That night, the first strike went out. Not bullets, just truth. I hijacked the department's private communications feed and scheduled an auto-send. A picture of their own offshore transfers, time-stamped, signed from Ivy's brother. The message didn't go public. It landed straight on their internal devices, close enough to smell. Then I waited. At 3 a.m., panic bloomed exactly as expected. Victor's voice roared across the recorded channel. Find him. Check every old contact, every informant. If a single file leaks, you're all done. The illusion of control began cracking. Each man started guarding his own back instead of his boss's. Within hours, 3 officers requested medical leave. Another vanished completely, his cruiser abandoned by the river. The chain of command had turned into a noose. But paranoia alone wasn't enough. I needed desperation. Next move, money. Julian rerouted $53,000 from their fake charity into the union's legal fund account. Using Victor's ID, I released a simple message from an anonymous whistleblower. Chief Victor used union money for personal gain. By morning, local media ripped into it. Reporters stalked the station steps. Victor's face glistened with sweat under the floodlights. Every camera that once protected him was now a blade against his throat. Still, parts of me trembled in the quiet moments between attacks. The war I was fighting twisted everything I'd ever been taught. Duty, order, restraint. There were times I could almost hear my sisters asking, "What are you becoming?" But each time doubt rose. Felix's broken frame behind that steering wheel snapped me back. None of this was vengeance for pleasure. It was surgical correction. By the second week, tension inside the station reached collapse. Officer conversations leaked through cracked networks, shouting in hallways, paper shredders running nonstop. One message from Dominic's old crew caught my eye. Grant and Victor met tonight. Said we handle our own loose ends. They were planning something. Probably me. So I planted a countermeasure. Sent Victor an anonymous email with a subject line reading only insurance. The message contained photos of his children leaving school, unharmed, but watched. Subtle. Not a threat, just proof of reach. I didn't touch them, but he didn't know that. That was the point. 3 days later, station surveillance caught Victor collapsing in his office. Stroke. Temporary, doctors said. He'd survive, weaker, paranoid. One down by his own fear. I sat inside a cheap motel eating canned soup, watching the news report. His words from months ago echoed. You need to let the system handle this. Now the system was handling him. But the victory felt hollow. The city wasn't cleaner, it was bleeding in new places. Julian broke radio silence. You can stop now, Ranger. You won. They're eating themselves alive. I stared at the rain through the cracked blinds. Not all of them yet. Mason Grant's still breathing. Julian sighed. He's the one with lawyers stacked like sandbags. You go for him. They'll bury you. I turned off the comms. The next objective wasn't destruction, it was exposure. I needed eyes bigger than theirs. Federal, independent, untouchable. At dawn, I left a thumb drive sealed in an envelope labeled for the truth. I dropped it into a locker at a public radio station, one I knew Ivy used to pitch stories to before she died. Inside, a short message. You wanted corruption stories. Here's the real one. Check the cameras from the Presidio district. Date April 12th. If the press found what I had, Victor's station wouldn't survive investigations long enough for him to recover. Still, I didn't trust chance. I prepared for their counterstrike. That night brought a knock on the shed door, slow, deliberate. I slipped a knife from my boot and stood frozen. A voice, low but familiar, whispered Hunter, Julian. He stepped in, wet and trembling. They found me. Traced the reroutes. I wiped what I could, but they're closing in. You need to move tonight. Through the fogged window, I saw why. Headlights. 2 black SUVs rolling through the industrial road. I grabbed the drives, stuffed them in a canvas bag. Go out the back, I said. Julian shook his head. They saw me walk in. Automatic fire shattered the window. We dove behind the workbench as bullets chewed through metal. Sparks lit the dark like lightning trapped indoors. My mind went combat quiet. Every sound slowed, controlled. I rolled a flash charge under the doorway, salvaged from old training kits. White light exploded. Shouts followed. When the smoke cleared, 2 bodies lay face down. Both wore private security gear, not police uniforms. I checked the tags. Corporate mercenaries hired through Mason Grant's law firm. No more middlemen then. Mason had declared himself part of the war. Julian was shaking hard, blood seeping from his shoulder. They won't stop, he gasped. No, I said, pressing gauze against the wound. But neither will I. He grinned weakly. You sound more like a ghost every day. We left the shed burning behind us, an inferno swallowing every fingerprint of what we'd built. The city skyline blinked in the distance, half alive, half dying. I tightened my jacket, feeling my sister's dog tags cold against my chest. The war had shifted from defense to documentation, from legal to psychological. Now it was heading somewhere darker. They'd taken everything dear. This time, I was coming for everything they trusted. The shed burned down to nothing but steel bones and ash. The smoke drifted low across the highway, taking pieces of my old life with it. Every plan I once had was gone. What remained was instinct. Julian's wound wasn't fatal, but he couldn't keep moving. I stashed him in a safe house near the edge of town, a forgotten property once owned by a veteran therapy group. Nobody checked places that smelled like abandonment. He handed me a new burner before I left. 2 contacts still loyal, he murmured, eyes heavy with exhaustion. One's inside dispatch. The other's a paramedic who saw the aftermath that night. Name's Brooke Turner. She's scared, but she knows things. I'll find her, I said. You'll find trouble, he replied, trying to smile through pain. Brooke's address sat in a low-income block near the docks, a neighborhood wedged between old warehouses and saltwater rot. Her porch light barely worked, flickering like nerves. Inside, she sat at a kitchen table littered with unopened mail and empty coffee cups. Her hands trembled when she recognized me. I don't want any part of this, she whispered. You already have a part, I said quietly. You moved my sister's bodies that night. Her eyes filled fast. They were already gone when we arrived. But that's not why you're here, is it? No, she wiped her face. Then you should know. One of the cops bragged about a shipment. He thought I couldn't hear him over the radio. Said something about getting the shipment out before the ranger starts asking questions. It wasn't drugs. It was people. Human trafficking. That changed everything. They used my sisters as an example. I said, voice low, steady. Yes, she nodded. They were supposed to keep quiet, but Ivy called the DA's office that afternoon. She didn't realize Mason Grant's number rerouted straight to the chief. The web was complete now, every lie feeding another. I leaned forward. Brooke, they'll come for you next. I know, she whispered. They already called. Someone named Grant Myers told me to disappear. I stood to leave, but she caught my sleeve. If you're going to do something, make it quick. Their rot's deeper than you think. Outside, rain started again, thin, icy, familiar. Every drop sounded like ticking time. I tailed Grant Myers that evening from the courthouse parking lot to the edge of the industrial district. He'd lost his nerves, speeding, checking mirrors too often, sweating like a cornered thief. When he turned into a dead-end freight dock, I killed my engine and followed on foot. He was pacing behind the trailer rows, talking fast on a burner phone. I swear, Mason, I'll clean it up. That ranger doesn't have anything solid. Yes, I'll handle Dominic's mess. So Mason still pulled strings personally. Good. It meant he'd overplayed his hand. Grant finished the call, dropped the phone, and crushed it with his boot. I waited until he opened his car door before stepping out of the shadows. He froze when he saw me. "You how? Funny," I said. "That's what every guilty man asks right before he runs. I've got nothing to do with save it." I tossed a digital recorder at his chest. "Press play." Dominic's broken voice filled the alley. "Chief Victor, City Attorney Mason Grant." Order came from the top. Grant's color drained. "You can't prove that." "I don't have to," I said. "You will." He swallowed hard. "They'll kill me. They'll try. Or you can buy your life back. With truth." Maybe it was exhaustion or fear, but he nodded. Later that night, I drove him to Julian's safe house. The three of us sat in candlelight while the storm clawed at the roof. Julian's shoulder was stitched, his face pale but alert. Grant broke first. "Mason's using police squads to move people across county lines. Girls, addicts, anyone invisible. Your sister's found a ledger. She emailed it to a journalist, but Victor's men cut the connection before it's sent." "Where's the backup?" I asked. "It was stored on Victor's private server at the station." "Still there?" "Probably. He doesn't think anyone would dare touch it." That was the moment it clicked, the irony I'd been waiting for. They'd buried truth in the very place built to keep it safe. The same fortress that mocked me. Mornings smelled of rust and coffee. I left Julian and Grant behind, drove east toward City Hall, the skyline bruised by dawn. On the radio, reporters screamed about leaked internal emails exposing union embezzlement. My earlier seeds of chaos had taken root. At a traffic light, a police cruiser slowed beside me. The officer glanced my way, eyes hollow, recognition flickering. I looked back until he turned forward again. No chase, no move. Fear had changed sides. The plan forming in my mind was brutal but precise. I'd learned from warfare that collapsing an enemy didn't always mean striking hardest. It meant striking loudest where they'd least expect silence. Victor's fortress, the station, would burn, but not in chaos. Not yet. First, I'd steal his heartbeat, the data he worshipped more than reputation. That night, Grant Myers slipped me a keycard. "This gets you in through the evidence wing, but there's a guard rotation every 4 hours. You'll have 8 minutes maximum. What will you do after this?" I asked. He grimaced. "Probably disappear. Maybe this cleans some part of me, maybe not." He left the car without looking back. I sat there a while, fingers resting on the steering wheel, rain pelting the windshield. My sisters' faces floated across the glass in every reflection, one smiling, one serious. The balance they always carried between joy and judgment. I whispered to them, "It's time." Then I started the engine. At headquarters, the night shift looked half awake, security lazy under fluorescent light. I followed the alley route used by waste trucks, badge ready. Every step through those halls echoed ghosts. Dominic's smirk, Victor's smothered laughter, the echo of my own anger when I begged for truth. In the evidence room, I found the server rack labeled under property control. The LED blinked like a heartbeat in darkness. I connected the drive, copying everything Mason had buried: ledgers, emails, transaction lists. Each file a nail in their coffin. 5 minutes. 6. Then the hum changed, an access alarm. Someone had overridden security from upstairs. They knew. I yanked the thumb drive free, slipped it into my boot holster, and moved through storage toward the exit. Boots thundered somewhere down the hall. Voices shouting. The stairwell door slammed open. 3 silhouettes with flashlights cutting the dark. Not uniforms. Suits. Federal, or Mason's own private team again. I dove behind filing cabinets, bullets sparking off metal. Paper rained down like snow. I returned silence instead of fire, slipping around the side, using every blind angle the architecture gifted. Years of combat reflexes guided me out through a maintenance shaft and into the night crawl space behind the generator room. When I hit asphalt again, the drive pulsed warm against my leg. The proof lived. Somewhere above, alarms wailed across the city. Official chaos once more viewed as maintenance malfunction. But soon, those files would speak for themselves. The first domino had fallen, and the rest were leaning on each other, trembling. The files burned cold against my skin as I drove away from the station. Each green light looked like mercy postponed. Behind me, alarms faded into the storm. Before me, the road stretched black and empty, except for one thing pounding behind my ribs. They would strike back, and they'd aim for whoever carried my name. By dawn, the first call came through the burner phone. Julian's voice, rasped and breaking. They hit the farm. Your aunt's place. They're looking for you. That one sentence froze the world. Aunt Eliza, the last blood left. 70 years old, 2 acres of quiet, the same porch that raised my sisters and me after our parents died. I didn't answer. I was already driving. The highway blurred into miles of gray rain. By the time I hit the county road, morning had turned to smoke-colored noon. The horizon flashed with police lights, distant, searching. I left the main road half a mile early, cutting through the back trails my uncle once used to haul lumber. The truck skidded over mud, branches scraping the doors. When the trees cleared, the farmhouse came into view, shutters flapping, the old weather vane spinning wild. The gravel driveway carried fresh tire tracks, 3 vehicles. The kind used for unregistered work, plain bodies, no plates. They were still there. I killed the engine before the hill crest and moved on foot. Every sound was memory. Rain spitting on barn tin, wind pressing through pine leaves. I could almost hear Ivy laughing from a long-ago summer. Recon first, 3 men in tactical jackets, moving lazy, sure of themselves. One guarded the porch, rifle slung loose. 2 more circled the barn. They didn't expect anyone trained to be hunting them. My mind shifted back into ranger rhythm. Every angle mapped, every distance measured. Motion, shadow, silence. The first fell without noise. A chokehold drawn just long enough, his weapon sliding free into the mud. The second turned at the sound of a branch snap I left on purpose. By the time his flashlight cut the dark, my elbow cracked under his jaw. He dropped before the echo reached the trees. Only the man on the porch remained, pacing, checking his phone. I watched him type a message, then lower his head against the rain. I slipped behind the tractor, grabbed the detached chain, and closed in while thunder rolled overhead. It ended quick, 1 pull, 1 silence. When the air finally stilled, I walked through the front door calling softly. Aunt Eliza? Her voice answered from the pantry. Faint, scared but alive. She stepped out, wrapped in blankets, tears mixed with rainwater. They said you killed those officers, that you were coming here next. I hugged her tighter than I meant to. They won't come again. On the table sat a glass of untouched tea, still trembling from what just ended outside. I checked her pulse, steady but shaken. She wasn't built for this world I dragged back to her doorstep. I told them I didn't know where you were, she whispered. One of them laughed, said nobody could hide from Mason Grant forever. I looked around the small house, pictures of Ivy and Violet still hanging, smiles unspoiled by time. He's wrong, I said. Forever ends tonight. I moved through the hall, collecting what needed erasing, spent shells, footprints, the small confession paper falling from the pocket of one of the intruders. A name written in short script. Victor. Even broken by fear, he was still giving orders from his hospital bed. They never learned restraint. They only knew escalation. When darkness returned, I loaded Aunt Eliza's truck, packed her essentials, and sent her east toward the state line. She didn't argue. The woman carried quiet wisdom, the kind you learn from lifelong grief. Before she left, she pressed a locket into my palm. For remembering what doesn't deserve forgetting, she said. Inside, a small photo. Me, Ivy, Violet, all smiles before the world went ugly. I'll bring them justice, I told her. She nodded. Bring yourself home first. The taillights vanished down the long road, swallowed by rain. I turned back to the porch and set the 3 officers' badges neatly across the railing. A message, not rage, just verdict. When dawn hit, the badges gleamed like coins on graves. Before leaving, I planted a call into the police scanner frequency, disguising my voice through a modulator. 3 units down, rural west. Tell Victor the bloodline stands. Driving back toward the city, I ditched the old truck at an overpass and switched into a stolen sedan I'd stashed weeks ago. The flash drive still thumped against my chest, a pulse that wasn't human but felt alive. On the radio, commentators screamed about vigilante battles, rogue rangers, collapsing command structures. The city was cracking faster now. Victor's leadership questioned by his own men. Mason Grant still hidden behind press conferences and lawyers. But not for long, because the next step wasn't just chaos, it was reclamation. I'd take their fortress, their symbol, their command post. No speeches, no mercy, just the truth left standing amid fire. The city skyline appeared again, neon reflections bending off the wet glass of skyscrapers. I parked 3 blocks away from headquarters, engine humming low. The sound of the storm drowned out everything except my own breathing. I studied the station, the same one from that first night, where I stood helpless behind yellow tape, where Dominic laughed, where Victor lied. Now it looked smaller, weaker. Tomorrow, the headlines would say that grief drove me to insanity. But tonight, I wouldn't be insane. Just deliberate. Just final. The last rain before the fire. The station looked like a fortress built out of arrogance, concrete pride with glass for conscience. I sat across the street in the rain, watching through the drizzle as shift changes blurred into flashing lights and tired faces. Every man in there carried a gun, but not one of them carried truth. Inside that tower of lies lived the last 2 men responsible for everything. Chief Victor, half alive in his recovery ward, and City Attorney Mason Grant, the architect of it all. They still believed the building would protect them. They still thought walls could stop ghosts. I scrolled through the drive, the stolen files flashing across my dashboard screen, financial logs, dispatch transcripts, even body cam cuts that showed officers turning rifles too deliberately. Each file tagged and traced directly to Mason Grant's accounts. I breathed slow, calm. This wasn't about revenge anymore. It was about exposure loud enough that no one could drown it out, not even the ones writing tomorrow's headlines. Julian's voice crackled on the comm unit. You sure about this? Everything we've done leads here, I said. He exhaled. You're looking at a hornet's nest. They'll kill anyone breathing near that property. Then it's a good thing I'm not planning on breathing inside, I replied. Through binoculars, I counted security points, front entrance, garage bay, communications wing on the north side. A web of green and red lights marking alarm systems. The same layout they used for field operations, predictable by design. I needed full blackout, not destruction, just 10 minutes where no one knew which way was north. 10 minutes. Then the city would see every secret Victor ever buried. At 2 a.m., the storm hit again, a sheet of rain, static eating half the city's radio lines. Using that cover, I cut into the utility access tunnel under Block 14, the line that carried the station's power grid. The smell of damp dust and copper hit first, then quiet. My boot steps staggered perfectly with thunder to mask echoes. When I reached the junction box, I installed a timed breaker, military-issue equipment that cut power clean, no surge, no trace. 10 minutes dead. Enough. I surfaced behind the motor pool, rain pebbles stinging my face, and slipped through the fence where I'd sliced it earlier during recon. The keycard from Grant Myers still worked, one last irony of corruption repurposed for justice. Inside the loading corridor, fluorescent light flickered. I moved fast, knew every turn from Dominic's map notes. Then the lights dimmed. The blackout had begun. Chaos erupted instantly. Radios died. Phones glowed useless. Elevators froze mid-floor. Officers shouted, boots echoing against steel stairwells. In every direction, flashlight beams cutting through rain-specked halls, men shouting orders no one obeyed. I slid through the evidence wing, using the confusion as cover. My target was the communications hub on level 3, where Grant stored mirrored backups of those same corruption files. Without those servers, they could rewrite everything in public record. The generator kicked once, then failed. Smoke crept from ceiling vents. Perfect timing. 2 men guarded the server doors. I moved through the dark, low and slow, like an old habit rediscovered. One flashlight blinked twice near my leg. Reflex fired before thought. The guard fell silently, tripped by his own weight and fear. The second turned, firing blind. His bullet shattered a glass panel, ricochet dying against the wall. I tackled him before he reloaded, pinned him beneath his own radio. He looked young, barely a rookie. In another life, maybe he'd have served beside me. I whispered, "Run while you still can." He nodded, dropped his weapon, and vanished into the smoke. I reached the terminal, connected my final drive, and uploaded every stolen file into the system-wide feed. Recorded testimonial audio from Dominic, fiscal logs linking Grant to illegal transfers, footage from the raids, all of it scheduled for simultaneous online release. A small line blinked on screen, upload pending. 8 minutes. Then, voices behind me. I turned. Mason Grant stood in the doorway, rain dripping off his pale trench coat. 2 armed men flanked him, private security, not police. His smile was thin, rehearsed. "You should have taken money when you had the chance," he said. I kept silent. Words were for people still worth arguing with. He nodded to his men. "End it." Bullets tore the dark air. I dropped behind a desk, shards slicing my arms. The upload bar crawled past 50%. I tossed smoke capsules, the room flooding into white clouds. Blind chaos again, my true ally. When I rose through haze, Mason was gone. His guards were coughing, confused. I grabbed one by the collar, slammed him against the wall. "Where'd he go?" "Roof, extraction." He choked, pointing upward. I left him breathing. I needed witnesses to tell stories. The stairwell tasted of metal and burnt air. Each step closer to the roof carried more thunder, more memory. When I burst through the exit, I saw Mason under the helicopter rotors, clutching a briefcase, the last physical ledger. Rain whipped sideways, blades screaming. He turned, face lit by lightning, eyes wide. "You can't stop this," he shouted over the wind. "I already did," I said. "Look behind you." Across the city skyline, every billboard, every emergency feed, every laptop flashing alive, my sister's names, Felix's stolen report, the entire corruption ring bleeding across airwaves. Upload complete. Mason froze, disbelief carving his face. Then Victor's voice crackled faint over the helicopter radio, desperate, weak. "Mason, pull out. It's over." Mason looked down at me, confusion twisting into anger. "You think this ends me? You'll go to prison for this." I stepped closer. "Maybe, but you'll rot there first." Before he could answer, lightning struck the communications antenna. Sparks rained around us, the helicopter wobbling against the gale. Mason stumbled back, dropped the briefcase. It burst open, papers scattering through the storm like condemned birds. He lunged for the edge, slipped on the wet metal, and clutching nothing but air, vanished into darkness. Silence fell except for the storm's applause. Below, the city sirens wailed in confusion, digital screens looping the proof of everything they'd hidden. Inside the station, officers poured out into the street, some in disbelief, others tearing badges from their chests. Years of fear undone in one broadcast. From the rooftop, I could see the reflection of flames, small fires from shorted wires crawling along the outer walls. The fortress wasn't exploding, it was crumbling, piece by piece, from the inside. I whispered through the calm, "Julian, it's done." He answered faint, tired. "They'll hunt you forever, you know. They can't hunt what's already smoke." I turned from the flames and vanished down the far side of the roof, into the rain that hid everything worth keeping secret. The storm's fury hadn't eased when I reached the ground. Water swept down the steps of the station like blood disguised as rain. Behind me, sirens screamed in protest, officers shouting orders that no one could follow. The broadcast had detonated across every device in the city. Midnight news loops spun the corruption story as if they'd been waiting years to say it out loud. And in the middle of that chaos, Chief Victor sat inside what remained of his kingdom, half alive, half delusional, still believing control could be shouted back into existence. I walked toward the entrance. No more hiding. No more waiting for justice from men who sold it. Inside, the lobby was chaos. File drawers overturned, computers smashed. Officers still loyal to Victor tried to block the main staircase, but the fear in their eyes was louder than their commands. One recognized me, his voice shaking. "Ranger, don't do this, sir. It's over." "Not until it's equal," I said. He stepped aside. Smoke drifted out from the communications wing, the smell of burnt wires and wet cement mixing with thunder. I moved through hallways I'd memorized from blueprints, each turn seared into a map of vengeance. At the center of everything stood Victor's office door, mahogany, polished, untouchable once. Now splintered, cracked under heat stress from faulty wiring. I pushed it open. Victor sat slumped behind his desk, oxygen tube looped across his face, for still pumping life into him he didn't deserve. His eyes lifted when he heard my boots on the marble. Shock flickered, then something else, a strange calm. "You made your point," he croaked. "No," I said. "The truth made it for me." He tried to laugh, but coughed instead, spittle red against trembling hands. "You think this makes you a hero? You lit fire to every rule that ever protected you. The rules protected men like you," I said, stepping closer. "Not the people you swore to serve." On his desk sat a framed photo, him with my sisters at a community awards ceremony months before their deaths. Smiles, handshakes, lies. I picked it up, felt my stomach twist. "You took this picture the week you ordered them killed," I whispered. He leaned back, weary, knowing there was nothing left to defend. "You could kill me right now. It still won't bring them back." "I'm not here to bring them back," I said. "I'm here to make sure you remember them until your last breath." He turned his chair slightly toward the window, where flames from the lower levels licked the black sky. "You already burned my house. Leave me the ashes." "Not yet." I unplugged the oxygen line, laid the mask gently on the desk, then turned the valve off. His fingers twitched, but he said nothing, maybe understanding that suffocation was too slow for what he'd done. "Fire cleans faster," I said. In the generator room below, the shorted systems had already ignited old papers. Sprinklers sputtered and died. When the first explosion cracked through the lower hall, smoke roared upward like a storm born from the building's own guilt. The officers who survived ran for exits. Others dropped their badges on the wet floor, the sound like rain hitting tin. Through the stairwell, I saw glass break, windows surrendering to pressure and heat. Victor's voice still echoed faint through the radio system, gasping between static. "Evacuate. Preserve the records." But every record had already been made public. There was nothing left to protect. I reached the ground floor hallway, passing the memorial wall of fallen officers. Among the faces were some of Victor's men, the same ones who executed Ivy and Violet. The fire reached their pictures first. For once, the flames chose right. Outside, people gathered across the street, recording what they thought was an accidental disaster. Sirens from neighboring precincts screamed closer, but the flames climbed faster than help. I stepped into the open, hood dripping rain, smoke curling from the building behind me. A few reporters shouted questions. Who started this? Is the ranger involved? But no one dared cross the street. Then, through the glass doors, I saw Victor's silhouette, chair engulfed in light. He didn't move, too weak or too finished to try. One moment of silence. Then the roof gave way. The sound rolled through the city like thunder that finally found its voice. Fire chewed the heart of the station, spreading into every floor, choking out the years of corruption that hid there. I watched until the glow reflected in every puddle, every window. Julian's call came through faintly over the static. Tell me it's over. I answered, it's ending. Then what about you? I don't belong here after the smoke clears. He sighed, half relief, half grief. You did what you promised. I looked at the locket hanging from my rearview mirror. 3 faces framed in silver, untouched by fire. I did what had to be done. News drones circled overhead as I drove out of the city limits. Behind me, a column of orange reached into the clouds, half glory, half grave. The rain carried the smell of resolve, wet ash, melted steel, and something like peace. For the first time in months, I didn't feel hunted, just empty enough to breathe. The badges on Aunt Eliza's porch, the whistleblower files, the exposed trails, those would finish the work. My part was over. Morning painted the city in shades of smoke and quiet disbelief. The fire that consumed the station still smoldered, its black plume stretching across the horizon like a warning to anyone who ever thought a badge could outshine truth. The news called it the Night of Reckoning. Reporters spoke my name in fragments. Some said vigilante, some said hero, but all said my twins' names right beside mine. That's all that mattered. I parked miles from the ruins, on a ridge where the skyline burned gold against the rising sun. The kind of gold that pretends to be hope. From here, the city looked peaceful, the way broken things sometimes do when you're too far away to hear them. The air smelled of wet ash and iron. I opened Aunt Eliza's locket, those same smiles staring back from years ago. Ivy's hair catching sunlight. Violet's paint-stained cheek pressed against my shoulder. 2 faces that never stopped reminding me why silence was never an option. Julian's message arrived through the cracked phone speaker. They know you're out there, but the feds are already tearing through Victor's files. Mason's network collapsed. Journalists are calling you the ghost of justice. I didn't reply. Some ghosts don't need credit. They just need closure. He added softly, where will you go? Where no one knows my name. I said, eyes still on the city. They can rebuild their house. I already buried my war. Later that day, civilians stood by the charred shell of the police headquarters. A small memorial formed in front of the ruins. Flowers, handwritten notes. Someone even framed a picture of Ivy and Violet smiling in uniform prints. For a moment, I wondered if they finally saw the difference between vengeance and balance. Sometimes peace isn't clean. It's just whatever quiet is left after noise dies. I slid the old dog tags off my neck and placed them under a rock near the ridge. Rest easy, I whispered. Your names are louder than all their lies now. Before leaving, I recorded a single message through my car mic, the one chance to speak directly to those still listening. This story wasn't just mine. It belongs to everyone who's ever watched truth get buried under power and still chose to dig. Sometimes justice isn't about winning. It's about standing where no one else will. What would you have done if it was your family, your blood, your truth under that tape? I paused, feeling the wind wrap through the open window. Tell me where you're watching from, I added softly. Which city, which heart carried this story tonight? I want to know who still believes that no badge, no title, no law sits above love. Then I smiled, tired but honest. If this story reached you, if it made you feel even one heartbeat of truth, tap that like button, subscribe to this channel, and stay close. I'll be here with the next chapter, another thriller, another storm, another fight for the kind of revenge that heals instead of destroys. Until then, take care of yourselves and the people you love. The recording ended. I turned the key, engine humming low. The road ahead stretched into nowhere, where quiet waited and ghosts finally rest easy. Tell me in the comments what kind of stories you love hearing. The ones that make you feel, fight, or remember. I'll bring them alive, just for you. This was the Ghost Justice. See you again in the next epic revenge story.